Jose Quintana has been a very refreshing spot of the Mets rotation since returning from rib surgery more than a month ago. In 35.2 innings pitched, Quintana has posted a 3.03 earned run average, a 3.40 fielding independent pitching, and striking out 16.9% of batters faced, as the contact managing southpaw has surrendered 3 earned runs or fewer in all 6 appearances made for the Mets this year. Going into his last start, Quintana also held a streak of 91.1 innings pitched without surrendering a home run, which was sadly snapped by Tyler O'Neill on Wednesday night.
This is a guy that I talked about, I believe it was the last episode or the episode before that, but I've been very pleased with what I've seen from Jose Quintana, especially considering the circumstances. I think that, again, with the injury that he suffered, or the reason he was out, is very unconventional. So I was very concerned because I was like, how do you come back from this? Are you going to be the same player? Especially when his velo was down and everything like that. How many rehab starts he needed? That worried me a little bit. I was like, man, do they trust this guy? Because right now, the pitchers that they're throwing out there, they're not better than him. So why is he taking so long in the minor leagues before he makes his major league debut for this season? And he came up and he's picked up right where he left off last year. And I think that's a really big deal because, again, last year he wasn't the Mets. And last year was a big year for him because, as I've said many times, before last year, he had been struggling a lot. So for him to have the bounce back year and to have it not be a one-year fluke, I think that's a big deal, and I think that points to good things going forward for next year, that if he could stay healthy the rest of this year, have a full spring training, a true spring training, he might be able to do some pretty good things for you next year. And you know what? If the Mets somehow get a bunch of arms this offseason, don't count on it, but if they do, he also serves as a very good trade chip and a very movable deal, because then you'll be 1 year, was he like 10 to 12 million, coming off 2 solid years. I think he'd be a guy that's very movable just in case. So I think he's just a good piece to keep around, because he could either help your team now as a pitcher, or if you actually have a bunch of good starters, he could get you a good return as well. So I've been very pleased. It stinks that the home run streak lasted, but the fact that he even had it, I think, was really good. He did walk a little too many batters last start against St. Louis, but again, able to limit the damage, get out of trouble, and that's been the case kind of all year long. He's gotten into some sticky situations, but like we say, as long as you're a pitcher who can get out of it and you don't let one mistake really derail you. We talked about it with Senga in the last episode, that you're able to kind of overcome runners on base and things like that. That's really important to being a very good pitcher. So I've liked what I've seen, and I hope he could keep it going the rest of the year and finish the year strong, because that would be definitely a good sign, because we know how many of the offseason moves didn't work out and guys that aren't on the team anymore. So to have at least one of the veterans come through, that would be refreshing to see.
I think I was in the same boat as you as to if they actually did trust Quintana going into his rehab, because they gave him a lot of rehab starts. And, he wasn't throwing relatively hard. His velocity definitely is down this year. And it's hard to see if this does play in, but we've really seen a lot of pinpoint accuracy and a great man from the left side. And, there is a few funky things that he's able to do. Talked about him being kind of a 5 and fly guy. Consistently, we've seen 6 innings from him. We have seen him go decent distance. I think that this is definitely important as to somebody being possibly a placeholder next year if they want to, trade for a starting pitcher after going after a few in free agency, something like that. I mean, I was open to trading him at the deadline because I feel like his value was probably at its highest. We saw that a lot of teams were interested in him, very impressed with his rehab. Every 5 days, if you need to get 5 to 6 innings from him, he's most likely been a guy to get that done. And that's something that has definitely been impressive. I don't think he's that great of a pitcher. I don't think that he is like this one guy that we have to keep for next. But I will say one thing, it has been a lot more refreshing, especially that home run list streak. The Mets pitchers have given up a lot of home runs this year. So it's definitely refreshing to see the guy just put up a few zeros and give you some quality.
He's not a star by any means. I think ideally he makes a great number 5 starter for you. Just a guy who, like you said, every 5th day he keeps you in the game so you don't have to overwork your bullpen and just makes good starts, because That should seem like something easy, but if you watch the Mets, that's not the case at all because we've seen the in-house options. We see how many times McGill got beat up, or how many Peterson. I mean, we've seen all these guys that come up. Budo, like so many guys come up, make starts. Reyes, like I mean, brutal. I mean, absolutely brutal to watch. So to have a guy like Quintana who gives you those, just decent starts every time, that's good. He's not someone I necessarily want in my playoff rotation, but I think that in a 162, he does serve good value of being a guy that can make that start every 5 days. So if you do have a nice top of the rotation, whether Kodai Sang is a part of that, or if the Mets add an arm, or you have guys like that at the top, then you have Quintana towards the bottom. He complements that very nicely. So I think he's definitely a guy that any team could use. I mean, any team could use a guy that could go, 5 to 6 innings, keep you in the ball game, make that start every 5 times. Because who doesn't need a solid number 5 guy? I mean, I think he serves that role perfectly, and he's just an overall, good guy, no issues off the field, none of that stuff. So. And this was a weird thing that happened to him. It's not like he's a guy who gets a lot of injuries and things like that because he made just about every start last year, and this was an unfortunate thing that happened to him. So I just think he's a guy that he has good value in a lot of different areas.
I'm looking at 2013 and I'm looking all the way to 2019. 33 starts, 32, 32, 32, 32, 32, 30. Like, this guy is out there every 5 days. And it was such a weird freak accident because that was something that we were expecting him to go out there every 5
Exactly.
days and give us those innings. And he got hurt because, the Mets, they have to have injuries like this. And now we're definitely seeing him
I
go
don't
out
think
there
it was
5 days
even.
with no
I don't think
hassle.
it was even an injury. It was more of a condition, if anything. I mean,
Yeah,
this wasn't
probably.
this wasn't your typical, torn this, messed up that. It was just a very weird thing that happened.
I didn't know what a lesion on your rib is. Again,
Me either.
I said it before. I said I thought it said lettuce on his rib. Like, that's how confused I was. I didn't understand it at all.